you are, though. Today, I'm doing a little thing a little different, okay? Not as polished as I normally do. No intros, but actually, you know what? I actually have the intro. Hold on just 1 second. Graphical? Oh, I don't. Oops. There we go. Here we go. Let's roll the intro. Let's get it going.
Hey, I thought it was all over.
Nope. They roll coverage.
I'm going to start with Ricky Purcell.
This is Florida wide receiver.
Today, we are doing something different. Normally, I do these breakdowns. I'll just do a single video, but today I'm going to group in a few. Today, we're going to talk about a few wide receivers. First one, we're going to talk about Ricky Purcell. I'm not really sure how to say his last name, but we're going to go with him. Then I'm going to look at Keon Coleman. I'm going to look at Lab McConkey. I'm probably going to look at Xavier Leggett because all signs pointing to Dave McCandless going and getting him. So with that in mind, let's jump into it. Let's go.
Ricky Purcell.
He's an elite athlete. He's not an elite athlete for a white dude. He's not an elite athlete for a slot receiver. He's an elite athlete for NFL terms. 4'4", 140, 97th percentile vertical jump.
Again, shout out to them. They are bringing us this information. I just cannot appreciate what they do. I'm super excited to do it. Obviously, Purcell is not somebody that was currently on my radar, but I'm very interested in him. So yeah.
96th percentile three cone, 90th percentile short shuttle. He's 23 years old, but he was really productive. He's got a little inside-outside versatility, and ultimately, I thought that he's one of the better route runners in the entire draft.
I think people will be shocked to know that he's 6'1", 189 pounds.
Okay, that isn't great. I like the size. 6'1" is good, but 189 is not the best. I'd push a little more, but 4'1", dude, 42-inch broad or 42-inch vertical. I mean, dude's pretty good. 15th. I mean, overall, he's going to be at least an average starter.
Like, he just looks smaller to me a bit on NFL field. And I actually think that goes back to his 20th percentile arm length, 17th percentile wingspan. But Hayden, I think the big question is he just a slot receiver, or can he be more than that? And I'll throw out some numbers that kind of back one of those statements up. 61 of 93 targets this past season were out of the slot. 98 of 156 over the last two seasons.
Those two that they jump up into what's essentially zone coverage and able to just grab the ball. So do we need a slot though when we have Mingo? Do we need a slot when we have, some of the guys that we have in Carolina? Because obviously I'm doing this more for like a Carolina Panthers thing. Obviously, if you're any of these teams, you need to really be looking at these guys. You could have a game changer here, but for my Carolina Panthers, I just don't love it.
And that's including playing with Anthony Richardson. However, it's not your typical slot player because we're talking about a dude who had an ADOT. He had a 17.3 average depth of target. I mean, 55 of his 63 targets were 10 plus yards down the field. So it was almost an intermediate and deep slot wide receiver versus the normal short jitterbugness that we get at the position.
We've seen this with Christian Kirk. The vertical slot option can win on the outside on occasion. I think that's kind of where I'm at with Ricky.
Okay, so this is my problem with this. This is college, okay? We're going to go back a little bit. I normally don't do this. If you check out my videos on the regular, I normally don't go back. But watch, he doesn't even really do anything, I would say. I wouldn't say he goes out of his way. I wouldn't say he makes a great, runs a great route or anything. He just happens to be completely open. Like, watch.
Can win on the outside.
And then he's going to zig back.
On occasion. I think that's...
And that's it. You have that little bit of separation right there. And that's going to be enough to... Oh, my gosh. Wow. What is this prolific wide receiver that I have here? Like, I just don't see it.
Kind of where I'm at with Ricky Purcell. There are some times where I think that this catch radius and the 189 pounds, it's not that much. I think there was some times where you kind of get pushed out of the way on some downfield routes, but I thought his ball tracking was exceptional. His hands are very good. He made some...
I mean, I'm not going to lie. That was a really, really, really nice catch.
I mean, maybe the best catch you'll ever see, period.
His catch rate on 10 plus yard targets was actually the...
I mean, that was a solid catch and be able to absorb the damage. Just great. But is that enough? Is that enough for me to take you at 33-39? No. I think this guy's going to have to fall 60s or later, or somebody's just going to have to really need him to do that. I don't think you would take a flyer on Adam Thielen, essentially. Like, deep balls, catch percentage. Okay. Yeah, look at some of those ones at the top. CD, Olave, Marshall, Terrace. Could have been so great. Wrong system.
6'5", 6'1". He obviously is the best in this class.
Bro, Keon Coleman, what is he doing down there? People don't like Jonathan Mingo. Look at him way down there, too. Palmer, Kurt, Zay, Rieger, Worthy. That's not great. I don't love these.
Class in that area. And like you said, his adjustments, either back shoulder or throwing it off, one hand stabs. There were a lot of errant throws, and I love Anthony Richardson, but some errant throws over the last 2 years, and he did his best to work through them. That is for sure. And again, because of those numbers,
I mean, that's a good catch, but I mean, he did have to adjust in midair. I understand that, but we see a lot of guys do that. And who's the competition? Are they playing Charlotte? Like, come on.
Like, I don't want people to get upset if someone else does call
okay, I like the ball tracking.
him a slot wide receiver and they believe he can be an outside wide receiver, which he might be able to do. I think the Christian Kirk one, I hadn't thought of that. To me, that makes so much sense.
Nah, man, he's 29-year-old Adam Thielen.
Right? Again, as someone who almost was a do-everything type player, downfield slot type wide receiver, he's
okay. Immediately, Persall, if we're taking him, I need to take him 60 or later. I cannot do 33 or 39 for this man, period.
He's not going to break a whole bunch of tackles. Did not do that often the last 2 years.
Okay, let's see. Javon Baker, Jermaine Burton, Young Coleman. Okay. Interesting.
Years. But man, he is such a fun player to watch. I mean, 26 and 24, 15 plus yard gains over the last few years. But what twists your brain is sometimes when he is body catching, he does that same like hopping midsection catch that like a Wes Welker or a Julian Edelman.
Thank you. The stereotypical white receiver. That's why I went with Adam Thielen, the guy who we already have on our Carolina Panthers. This is not a guy that we're going to keep. Like, we're not going to have multiple slots because, just to be honest, ISM is a slot at best. Adam Thielen at this point in his career, especially. And then you're adding on somebody like this. I don't feel like that's the thing. And then obviously you have Jonathan Mingo who could work in the slot. So I don't love this.
So it's so easy to compare him to those guys. Let's not forget Julian Edelman played with Danny Amendola. Julian Edelman was an outside guy that also played in the slot. If that's
but again, see, that's not, I don't think of that as a crazy catch. He didn't do anything crazy. He ran down the field, caught the ball. I understand broad stroke to be painting, but
the career path that Ricky Pearsall takes, holy hell, we're in for a great player.
I saw Edelman pop up when I was doing my like statistical comps based off the combine because Edelman's agility drills were fantastic. Same thing with Ricky Pearsall has shown. One of the comps that I came up with was Jerry Jeudy. Now, Jerry Jeudy has been on the outside and has not been.
If you're getting compared to Jerry Jeudy, the guy who just got called a jag or just another guy by Steve Smith, like, come on, my guy. I don't think Judy's really worth it. He needs to go to the right fit. Jerry Jeudy would have been better being a Kansas City Chief, obviously, than being a Denver Bronco. But obviously, he's going to have a different future moving forwards. I'm just hoping he's able to get that target share that he's wanting because I really thought that he could develop into somebody. But again, where you matter or where you land matters more than anything. So obviously, Denver was not the right place for his long-term development.
That successful. When Jerry Jeudy's in the slot, I think he's actually a decent player that's got paid a ton.
Decent. Sure. I'll give you decent, but decent is not slot. Decent is not good money.
Of money. I think there were some times where Ricky Pearsall would kind of oversell some of his routes, but when he's actually in control, the route running is really, really nice. So I think that Ricky Pearsall, I saw him on these option routes from the slot, in breaking and out breaking routes from the slot where he has some space to maneuver on each side. I think that's when you see his agility and then this burst on the first step really pop off. And we're talking.
See, that moment, I don't think really, I'm not giving him the credit for that. That was bad tackling by the defense and all that other stuff. So I just, I'm sorry I'm being critical of this guy. But man,
all this downfield production where he's pretty efficient there. Last year on his targets between.
See, look, wide open. There's nobody around him. It's not like he
0 and 10 yards down.
16 of 17 on targets of 0 to 10. No offense. It's because it was getting thrown in zone coverage. There, he's catching the ball and they're immediately hitting him.
He got 16 of 17.
I don't think that's a I think that's a very misleading stat. Regardless that I absolutely love Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, I feel like that's a little misleading of a stat. Not saying that he's purposely trying to mislead or anything like that. These guys put out absolutely amazing work, and if you need somebody to follow for more fantasy information and just football information in general, these two are absolutely fantastic follows. Please make sure to go do that.
An 80% success rate when he was thrown targets, catchable targets from the slot. So he can win in the underneath part of this game as well.
Yeah, the down.
Again, the last one. I'm going to go back. I can't.
Rate
this is the one that I stopped before.
Thrown
this is the zig.
Targets, catchable targets.
Again, you already got almost a full yard, if not more, of width separation on top of the actual separation going up. So, I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5 yards separation right here
from the slot. So he can win in the underneath part of this game as well.
Yeah, the downfield stuff last year was interesting because it felt like a whole bunch of it was double moves or slot.
Again, wide
fades
open
or fake screens where he basically was almost manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. Those are way too wide open.
Then again, going back to his 2022 work, everything because that offense was pushed almost 5 yards further down the field, and he was still super comfortable in that area. Like the diagonal crossers from one side.
Again, failed coverage by that guy. But again, it looked like they were playing zone. He's kind of like not really going with him like you would in a true man. So
the field to the other are so deadly with him. And again, how he makes these unreal adjustments. He can lose again because of his arm length and, corners can work through him. But man, he gives it
again, nobody around him.
A great try in terms of the body control that he adds on top of it. How dare you put that Jerry Judy Juju on him? Because I thought that his
own coverage, he's going to get a bunch of yards and everybody's going to be like, oh my God, look at Pearsall.
And body control on top of it it's always what scared me about like an animated route runner.
And again, against Appalachian, I'm sorry, this is Missouri, but I thought it was Appalachian State for a minute, but still Missouri.
Of Jerry Judy, I thought that Pearsall played like much more.
Pearsall. Okay. I'm going to remember that. I keep butchering this man's name. I'm sorry, Mr. Ricky.
More composed with everything. I mean, some of the names that popped up to me, the Giants version of Steve Smith, Colts, Anthony Gonzalez, who was a first-round pick back in the day with Peyton Manning. I think the athletic profile that he brings to the table, like if you just watch him, you might think this is an average athlete. We see one of these guys every single year. Man, the athletic profile on top of it kind of differs him from a whole bunch of the other types that we've seen in this second, third round territory, like the Wan'Dale Robinsons or the Josh Downs. And I love Josh Downs as a
again, wide open ball against subpar defense. It's not what's going to really happen in the NFL. I don't see this becoming a normal thing, but
prospect. This might be like an extra gear on top of that.
Totally different gear. Now, for some potential limitations, I think statistically, these are fifth-year players, 23 years old. This is kind of an iffy kind of landing spot. And then also this last season, only 58th percentile in his pass game production, like the team share.
It literally looks like, for the most part, he is obviously we've seen some, especially that one where he corrected the ball, really tracking it down. These are all zone shots. So
Florida's receiving yards, only 58th percentile. His age adjusted production in general is 41st percentile. So there was something.
Yeah, the speed could help, but
enough where he wasn't completely dominating throughout his entire
age adjusted production. Let's see, historical percentile. Age adjusted. I've never seen this before, but okay, let's look at it. Pearsall, any of these people, I'm going to look. Lad McConkey, super low. Oh, that hurts me because I really love the name Lad, and I think it's hilarious. But okay, Adani, Brendan Rice, Jalen Polk, Worthy, Keon Coleman, Neighbors, Troy Franklin, my guy. Good Lord. I don't think he survives, right? Troy Franklin doesn't survive till 33, right?
Career, but whenever I watched him on the tape, you can just see the athletic traits kind of pop off. So I kind of liked him more in the slot role. I think he will be able to win on the outside, but I think that the motion routes and some screen stuff to him, option routes on occasion, I think that you're going to get all that type of stuff, and you're going to see the athleticism after the catch in those type of circumstances, not as much so like breaking tackles, working over the middle.
And I know this is an outlier draft class when it comes to wide receivers because there's so much.
I didn't love that block.
Talent here. By the way, go and watch all of our other videos. We have prospects.
Again, great catch. that's crazy, but that's not really what I need you to do every game, especially if you're going to be playing slot. So
profiles on basically every single one of them. But like if Wan'Dale Robinson is the 43rd pick, or John Mechie's the 44th pick, right? Or we even go to like Sky Moore as the 54th overall selection. And that like
JSN went first round.
And Jigba, crazy dude, absolutely going to develop. I think that Lockett will be shopped either during the season or in the off season. He will not be on the team, so it's going to be DK and JSN moving forward. So I'm excited for those Seahawk fans out there too. New coach with Mike McDonald. There's a lot going on there. Obviously keeping Geno as well, but I still think you guys are going to be interested in some other opportunities, but we're going to see.
Guys that I mentioned. So like, again, any other year, I think like maybe the first wide receiver off the board at the start of round 2 is in his possible future. Heck, it still might be. I could see a team falling in love with Ricky Pearsall because, again, I loved Anthony Richardson as a prospect, and just seeing the connection those two guys had was something special.
Okay, fair. You want to send him to the Colts. You want to go get, you know what? I got this up. Let's see. Colts. They have the 20s they have. Okay, they have a 46 and an 82. I think at 4-6 you can go get him. So if that's the case, you want to go get him, Pearsall, go get him. Go have fun. Go crazy. But not at 15. Not at anything like that. No way. Get this posted that we are live. Wife's texting me too. See, let's pin this one now. All right, let's go. Let's get back to this.
And I could again see and envision NFL front office being like, hey, this is exactly what our young quarterback needs at the NFL level.
Right now, he's my wide receiver 8. I have a round 2 grade on him. I'm thinking about doing an early round 2 grade on him because just the athletic traits, like you said, compared.
Okay, absolutely fair. Hayden, I think that's good. I wouldn't obviously put him to my Panthers because I'm going to cry if that happens. But somebody else, I'm down with that. Again, 46 to the Colts for him to reunite with Anthony Richardson makes complete sense.
The other and then 97th percentile vertical as well. So big fan of his game. I think slot is his destination spot, and I think that's totally fine.
All right, that does it. Before you go, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumb.
Yeah, again, I'm going to do this after all of these. I'm getting all my videos today from Underdog Football Show, so make sure you follow them. Make sure you follow at Josh Norris and at Hayden Winks on Twitter/X. They are bringing us this amazing content and really just kind of filling us in. For me, Pearsall is a mid to late second round pick. If you take him high second, I just don't see it. I don't see with what I just saw in becoming like some big time wide receiver. Now I am going to go with the other. Now that I know that he's actually white wide receiver in Ladd McConkey.
This is Georgia wide receiver
Ladd McConkey.
And don't do it. I know you want to comp him to that little white slot wide receiver. Ladd McConkey could play on the outside.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure. Ladd McConkey is a really interesting one. He's been my kind of go-to for our 33-39. If he does, that means a lot of other defensive players are probably taken. When it comes to wide receiver, I'm going to be a Carolina Panthers person here right now and say I don't think we should waste either of our 30s picks, the 33 and the 39th pick, on a wide receiver. I think we can get one later in the draft. I think we can get a backup quarterback for Bryce down the way. Again, I would also find somebody closer to his frame, builds, and everything like that. I've seen a lot of people taking backup quarterbacks in this draft, and I just don't think it's worth it. I think it puts too much pressure on Bryce. Again, I also don't think a wide receiver would help. I think Deontay Johnson, Thielen, Mingo, and maybe add one more through free agency or something like that is a little bit more used to. But at the same time, I also don't want you to fling the pickle your soul. So
shows up with 4.39 speed, 90th percentile agility, and for my money, I think that he is one of the best wide receivers exploding out.
I'm not going to lie. I'm going to keep the same criteria that I was going before, though. I got to do this. I was just bashing Ricky for catching wide open zone passes. So that last one that McConkey just did, obviously it's a little bit more of like a cutback route.
90th percentile.
I mean, he also looked like he was getting face mask right there, but whatever.
Agility and
boom, got it. Great. That's exactly what I need you to do. Separation. I like the physicality.
For my money, I think that he is one of the best wide receivers, exploding out of his breaks on in routes, out routes, and obviously can work.
He had man and another guy on him, was still able to make the catch. Obviously, it was a pretty easy catch, but still absorbing the hit.
Down the field, you'll see him in motion. You'll see him used all over the place. Yes, he will kick inside the slot, but
again, more of like a stop route. I don't love it.
We should view him as an outside wide receiver.
Again, blown coverage. You're 7 yards.
5'11 and a half,
I hate that.
186 pounds. The dude posted a fourth.
Never mind. I'm out. I'm completely out. 5'11 for a wide receiver. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of short receivers. I want 6'2", in my personal opinion, or higher. But yeah, I can't. Lad, that's a bad one for me. I'm gonna give you the rest of this video though. Okay, rest of this video.
Draft prospects. His vertical and broad jumps were both above or average, if you want to put it that way. When I watch him, man, McConkey, there's zero fat to his game. You know, his movements are so intentional. When you watch him in his routes, like the separation at the top off the break is so nice. It's an animated cut with, you know, zero wasted movement. If there is someone in the direction he has,
I mean, I just don't
to
love
get
it.
to on an
again against subpar, against very subpar defense.
outside breaking route, he's so savvy with like this arm pull through that
I like that. That was a good one. You had the dude literally draped on you. That was a good catch.
then he displaces them and gets to that spot. I think his route pacing and speed.
Again, wide open zone, like I call it an underthrow. You know, just kind of right up there in the first 10 or so yards.
He's not like constantly jamming the turbo button. Again, changing the gears in his routes, to me, really, really speaks to.
That was good, but again, he's kind of behind you already, so he's trying to cut off that top part of you getting you know, maybe ahead of him. I like this. It depends on how quickly
His
he's able to bust
understanding
out.
of the wide receiver position right now.
Okay, that agility, that's a difference. Not speed, agility. I like it.
He'll catch some of these corners, not anticipating how fast he is. You'll see that
That's what I just saw in that clip right there. Great shout out, Mr. Hayden.
on double moves on occasion where he'll score a long touchdown. There'll be some times where he'll stop after the catch, turn around, run the other way, and absolutely beat the angles that these DBs are chasing him down. I see the same thing with you. He runs with tempo on the outside in his route running, but if he wants to, when he's running at a full speed at a corner that's in off coverage, he is terrifying to guard. I see him win on outbreaking routes. Again,
It's the agility that scares people, I think. They're kind of planning, and then all of a sudden he stops, puts his foot in the ground, and then is able to pivot and immediately get back up to speed. Something we see a lot with like Tyreek Hill. Obviously, I'm not saying, again, I am not saying Lad McConkey is Tyreek Hill. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's the same idea.
it's outside leverage. I've seen him win on in-breaking routes against inside leverage because he can manipulate these guys back and forth.
Again, number 8 just kind of is not in the right position, is having to jump over somebody, so Lad gets an extra foot, and then he's gone.
So yeah, he played 79% of his snaps on the outside, and I think that he can win that. For right now, people are kind of scared of Lad McConkey, especially in dynasty drafts, because the production was low end. So I wanted to.
Lad McConkey is, how am I going to put this the right way? He is going to be put out there as Cooper Kupp-like. Cooper Kupp-like. Just watch.
To get to that real quick. For me, 22nd percentile age-adjusted production. He's a fourth-year player, a little bit older, but the couple caveats there. Obviously, Georgia, they're not passing the ball a ton because the offense they're in, he has this guy named Brock Bowers that he's competing with. He's had some minor injuries, nothing too major, but a couple minor injuries every single year. And if you look at it per route, per target, he led college football last year in EPA per route. Led everybody. And then he was number 2 in success rate.
Wow. Constantly seeing Troy Franklin up there. Looks like he's on the lower end of it, though. But then again, Marvin Harrison, look where he's at. Look where Keon Coleman is. Jalen Polk. I mean, there's some interesting ones.
Per target. So whenever he needed to make a play, Lad McConkey was absolutely able to do that. And I think that he's one of the craftiest wide receivers. And then when you show up running sub 4.4, that's why I think you can actually envision this guy potentially as a late round 1 grade.
119 total receptions in 3 seasons. As you put it, Brock Bowers was their
Hmm. Okay. It's all right. I don't love it. It's all right.
primary pass catcher. Brock Bowers also had 30 screen targets in 2023. Compare that to Ladd McConkey, he had 7. In 2022, both had 21 screen targets, but Brock Bowers had 50 slot targets compared to Ladd McConkey's 25. Again, McConkey was not Georgia's slot guy. That was Lovett, that was Bowers. So to be honest with all of you, Ladd McConkey had to do the difficult stuff.
Yeah.
He was not fed the easy stuff. He had to run the legit big boy. 13 of his 30 catches
13 of 30 isn't great, my guy.
went for 15 plus yards.
Wow.
20 of 59 the year before that. As you said, he is 5th
I don't love it. I don't love it at all.
in yards per route run in this entire class. So again, totally
Again, wide open. His quarterback could have thrown him a touchdown, but he's going to underthrow the ball.
understand that his receiving numbers over the last 3 seasons, 478, 762, 447, that is not going to come close to some of the alphas that we have in this awesome wide receiver class.
Okay. I'm really not liking Ladd McConkey unless he's a later pick, but somebody else is going to go grab him. He's not going to be there available for my Carolina Panthers. I should just stop this right now, but honestly, I want to really see what he is. Maybe he's available to somebody else. So hopefully another team go out there and grab him. Need a good slot receiver. I mean, it looks worth it, but 33 or 39. No.
But again, when you whittle it down to when he was given opportunities, he totally shined in those areas. And Hayden, I actually think he's sneaky good after the catch.
Sneaky devil.
If you want to put it that way. Like, we've highlighted his athleticism, but if you look at his zone opportunities, he will catch it. And then when a defensive back is trying to close on his angle, he'll give them this outside dead leg, which then forces the defensive back to overrun it, then reach with an arm tackle. And frequently Ladd McConkey is running through that arm tackle to pick up an extra 3, 4, 5 yards.
It sounds crazy, but the yards after the catch stuff kind of reminds me of like what Garrett Wilson was able to do. Now, Garrett Wilson's better at the catch point because he's maybe a little bit better of an athlete. But if you look at Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey, and then another guy, Chris Olave, if you just look at their height, weight, speed, and where they were used on the field, we're looking at very similar players. Obviously, those guys were more productive than Ladd McConkey is. I think they're both of those guys are a little bit better at the catch point. If I'm looking for a flaw for Ladd McConkey, to me, it is a little bit of that smaller catch radius than some of the other guys that are working down the field. I think there's a couple times against press coverage, he could be knocked off. The other part about this is when you're watching last year's tape, he was dealing with an ankle injury, especially in that Alabama game. So I think that you're going to have to move him off the line of scrimmage. He's not going to be an X wide receiver. No one's expecting to be slot, motion, bunch sets, flanker. All that stuff will kind of minimize some of these size issues that we have with Ladd McConkey. But we've seen a player like Chris Olave, he's basically used in the same exact way as Ladd McConkey. He can go round 1. So that's why I'm not ruling out Ladd McConkey as a round 1 guy right now.
Yeah, I'm sure producer Waves has already thrown it up on the screen, but Chris Olave is my comparison. It's almost the exact same size. And when you look at college targeted passer rating against man versus zone coverage, Ladd McConkey and Chris Olave are.
Let's see, college targeted passer rating against man and zone coverage. Shout out to the people that brought us this. Looks like the data is from PFF College Football Plotter, chart from @football_insights. Zay Flowers, Wilson McMillan. Okay, I'm looking at the ones down there. Dontavian Wicks, Baker, Jordan Addison. Okay, it's an interesting one. So when I'm looking at the Amon Ra, okay. Hank Dell, Roma Dunze. Okay, so there's got some interesting ones down there. Then we got Devontae up there, CD, and Chigba, Smith, Wilson, Judy. Okay. Okay, so there's some solid names in that list.
Right next to each other. Like they really do play a very, very similar game. It's almost like unassuming
I like the other name in that circle, Jalen Hyatt. Shout out to Jalen Hyatt.
until you watch like Drive In and Drive Out, and like they are the dudes. Like they are the guys. It's not overly animated like a Garrett Wilson can be, like a Stephon Diggs can be. And it's not like, oh man, there he is, such a explosive burner after the catch. Then there's just the complete package there. And hey, and I think some people, either because of his skin tone or because of this production, people might like worry that this is a profile that might give them concerns if a player was like a below average athlete, but he's not. At worst, he's an average athlete. And in many ways, he's an above average athlete. He's a great athlete.
Right? Yeah, come on.
And so I don't think that he, this is his ceiling, that he
That was a great catch.
has reached either. Just more opportunities is going to extend his ceiling on top of that for me.
Yeah, I think like you said,
It's the speed, it's the agility that really sets him apart. But is that enough? And when does it start fading?
winning on the toughest routes. Hopefully in the NFL, he's going to kick inside, get a couple more easier routes. The two quick names, Tyler Lockett moved into the inside, and I think that he has a little bit of that. And then I think at worst, you can use him like Zay Flowers, who's even smaller and less athletic than Ladd McConkey, where you can kind of give him the free stuff. Then obviously he can win down the field as well.
I will say a huge difference that I saw in Zay Flowers' game versus Ladd McConkey's is Zay Flowers, when he catches the ball, he loves to square up to defenders and then win after the catch. Ladd McConkey has that JSN, Don Kincaid style of, I'm going to sit in this zone, catch the ball, spin with that momentum away from where the defensive back is. And again, in one movement, go and pick up some extra yards. And if you question at all his athleticism, go and watch routes that are developing 10 plus yards down the field. He is the fastest Georgia pass catcher doing any of them. And those are 5-star Georgia athletes that he.
Yeah, but just because, no offense, just because you're beating out these Georgia athletes doesn't make you an NFL wide receiver. Do I think he's going to succeed in the NFL? Sure. At what level? I'm not really sure. Obviously, I want him to, have a great prosperous career, but he's going to have to fight through what most wide receivers have to fight through.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. So ultimately, he's my wide receiver 5. I think the top 4
5
guys who just have too freaky of total tools, especially with their size. So Ladd McConkey doesn't have that, but to me on tape, I think that he's a round 1 guy. I think that he would have been right there with Jordan Addison and JSN in last year's class in the mix to be the top wide receiver. It's a deep class, so maybe he's a second round pick. We'll see where he ends up there, but do not just put him into that bucket of Wes Welkers and Danny Amendola's. Those guys just do not have
this. But I do have a major concern.
I would agree with that.
Concern about him in contested situations.
Yes.
Like when he does have to fight through contact and adjust to a football in the air. I think the timing is off. I think that.
Can that be corrected though? I'm assuming yes.
That his launch point to go up and try to jump into these situations is off too. He kind of looks lost in those situations, to be honest. So like, hopefully he goes to a quarterback that knows when he creates separation, he can throw it to the area of open space rather than underthrowing it. Like we kind of saw this year with Georgia at times. And obviously with Stetson Bennett at times too. And again, had some brutal drops, I thought, back in 2022, which also would have accentuated some of his counting stats. But he doesn't have to be great at everything. He can be great at some things and still be super productive. And I would even like him to be that speed, fly, motion guy at times, because we know he has that athleticism. And I don't think Georgia used him enough in that area too.
Yep, completely agree.
All right. That
Totally fair criticism. Obviously, if you're concerned about that stuff, you're not really going to put him out wide then, especially when there's much better guys to put out wide. He'll probably get relegated to a slot, to kind of like that middle of the field kind of thing. Or he might even get his position converted, but only at 5'11", you're not really going to be able to do a whole lot. Does he become a special teams guy with the occasional, being on the field? Yes, I could see that. Could I also see him being a number 1 receiver for a team? Sure. I don't know how many number 1 receivers are going to be 5'11", but, hey, there's some. Now, I'm going to do 2 more today. The 2 that I want to do are going to be Jalen Polk. Actually, no. Let's do Xavier Leggett and Troy Franklin. Okay. I'm going to do Troy Franklin first. We're going to finish it up with Xavier Leggett.
This is Oregon wide receiver Troy Franklin.
He's one of the most productive receivers in the class. Also,
again, shout out to Underdog Fantasy, to Josh Norris, to I'm totally Mr. Winks, Hayden Winks, for bringing us all this information. If you haven't followed them, make sure you go follow them. They are out there putting out quality content constantly. We've already seen 2 of them. Let's go into Troy Franklin, our 3rd wide receiver, before we break up into XL.
A true junior with 4.41 speed, age adjusted, 92nd percentile, production 3.3 yards per route run. He averaged over 20 fantasy points per game with Bo Nix as his quarterback. In terms of EPA per route, 3rd best. And then to me, one of the true remarkable things about his statistical profile, the 5th highest success rate per target, which is pretty impressive because he has a bunch of his targets obviously coming way down the field because of his speed.
Just some
Okay, that's kind of crazy.
numbers that matter, counting stats, almost 1,400 plus yards on 44% of your catches be pretty good. That happened with him. 37 this past season out of 84 catches with a 13.1 ADOT. He rarely played out of the slot too. Just like 13% of his snaps this past season were in the slot. 6'2", just a
That's crazy.
shade under that, 176.
Okay, California guy, 6'2", 176, 31 7/8, 8 3/4, 4.41, which is great. 161, 39-inch vert, so it's about an inch shorter than eventually be a plus starter. I like that.
Pounds. That surprised me. Some other measurements.
By the way, there's absolutely no way this falls to my Carolina Panthers at 33 or 39. If he follows at 33, take him.
For him, 8 3/4 inch hands, which is 9th percentile, a 4 broad jump, 63rd percentile 3-cone, and a 30th percentile shuttle. Hayden, to be honest with you, I am having a tough time with Troy Franklin. So tell me the goods. What do you like about his game?
So, like you said, he has the ability to win from the perimeter and downfield. And I think that some of his length comes in play. I think he's very good over his shoulder, kind of catching that in. And I think his frame does help him do that. He made some fantastic
Great catch on the sideline.
Contested catches where he's jumping up the vertical game right there.
No, I'm not going to give him credit for that.
It's just winning downfield and having a little bit more length than this type of profile. Now, to go to the negatives, I do think that there's limitations because of the frame, those tiny hands that you're talking about. Yeah, the weight. He can kind of get launched against press man coverage at times. And I think that his ability to work over the middle, to me, is his biggest red flag to his profile. If you were watching the NFL Combine, you saw this with the gauntlet drill. I'm not sure how much he trusts his hands working over the middle, and they didn't really ask him to win over the middle.
Okay. Interesting. We're going back to this one. Troy Franklin's in a solid spot on most of these charts, to be honest with you. The one that I keep seeing towards the bottom, no matter what, is Keon Coleman. So that's a real interesting one there.
Very often. So I think for right now, where I'm kind of coming from is he's somebody that's going to be able to take the top off. And I think he's young, so you can develop him over the middle. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to be where he's going to win in the end.
Okay, then follow me here. Do the Chiefs take Troy Franklin? Get somebody cheetah-esque, again, in the same vein as the cheetah. Not the cheetah, though. To take the top off, you get Rashee Rice after 5 or 6 games, so you can feed Troy Franklin to get him comfortable. Rashee Rice comes back. You guys are off and running to a 3rd Super Bowl.
NFL.
Couple stats to back that up. If we're talking about routes beyond the line of scrimmage this past season at Oregon, 76% of his routes were either slants, hitches, or goes. So it was almost limited to that straight line that we talk about. And then
really, that's another interesting one that maybe hasn't been picked up on. I need to clip this.
PFF charts something called tight window targets. In 2023, he caught 3 of 26 tight window targets this past season.
Boy, that's like Lad McConkey's 13 of 40 or whatever the hell it was.
And I went in and watched every single one of those because what you talked about stood out to me of, hey, when there is contact, when someone, a defensive back, is converging on him on these in-breaking routes or along the sideline, man, it just seems like he is so easily taken off of his mark. A lot of his production is really important. He definitely has that long speed.
Again, wide open in that one.
But and he did have a bunch of, wide open targets thanks to Oregon's offense. They use their spacing very, very well. But he's a solid athlete. He's not short. He's skinny. I did see like every once in a while, like those lean in, snap out routes versus man. He does get off balance due to contact either early or late in his route. I thought he was super unsuccessful. He was better in 2022 with it, but like this past season when we watched it, that gives me major questions of, is he one of these difference maker number 2 wide receivers, or is he just a number 2 wide receiver out there?
That's going to be something I do in a whole separate video. My wide receiver rankings, whether or not you're wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or more. He's a 2. Troy Franklin is a 2. He's never going to be a 1. I'm going to say that right here, right now. I'm sorry, Troy Franklin. You're never going to be a team's number 1 X. You're never going to be a team's leading receiver unless you become a Chicago Bear. So I'm sorry, man. You're going to relegate yourself to wide receiver 2, which is still a great place to be, but just not 1.
And in that case, there might be like a Troy Franklin every single draft class.
I settled in kind of more in the second half of that evaluation. I have him as a strict round 2 grade, not even a
strict round 2 grade. Okay. Again, I keep seeing Marvin Harrison there, but I don't really care what anybody says. I love Marvin Harrison.
Early round 2. And this class is so loaded. He actually ends up right now as my wide receiver 10 in the class. There was some top 5 hype for him, but as I watched him, I just saw some limitations they're talking about. Like my stat I had, only 11 of his 21 slant targets were caught. Only 6 of them went for a first down. Those are like more or less kind of gimmies, especially in a very RPO based offense.
Absolutely. That's not great at all.
Offense where you're just like reading it. There's no one else working over that part of the field. You should be able to catch that in Boogie. I didn't think that his like wiggle laterally was super impressive. The short shuttle, he was in the 30th percentile. So that's some evidence towards that. So I think that he's kind of this deep threat only. The comps that I have, Quentin Johnson, I thought people kind of had differing opinions on Quentin Johnson, but I thought he was going to be struggling working over the middle, and he's going to be a deep threat until he can beat press man coverage. Those are the kind of names, and those are day 2 names to me. But it's hard to overlook just how productive he was being 21 years old from a power.
Okay, 21. That's pretty nice. Let's see. Target wise, 229, 79% wide open. Oh, out wide. I'm sorry. I was about to say wide open. 79% out wide. Slot. Okay.
Power 5 school like that, I think to me is it gives him a floor, and then I think the speed is a little bit faster on film than what the 4.4 140 time is. Apparently, he was battling the flu during that.
Holy shit! I'm sorry. Hold on. Jacob Cowing got 495 targets. Oh, college career. I thought this was 1 year. I was like, holy shit. That's still insane. Wow. Mostly slot. Wow. Shit. Jacob Cowing.
Well, and I actually think that 4.4 140 is hampered by his 10-yard split, which was a 1.61, which is 19th percentile. So people call it the flying 20, kind of like that middle portion. That's probably where he picked up a lot of his pace. And obviously his miles per hour numbers during his time at Oregon lean into the fact that he's one of the faster wide receivers of this group. I'm fine with like a 4.4 140 when it comes to this play style. But yeah, it probably could have been even better if it wasn't for that start that he had.
If it was a 60-yard dash, he would look really impressive. And I think that's part of it.
But at the same time, I think you can see a potential slower 10-yard split in his game on tape, where if a corner is able to stick into his hip pocket and press man coverage and again contact him, then you're not going to be as successful as you are when he gets to that 20 or 30.
So he's relying on speed is what I'm hearing, essentially. I mean, again, you're a full yard ahead of him. That's a fully wide open shot. As long as your quarterback puts it in the right place, it's a touchdown. So I'm not really
30-yard mark when he gets up to his fastest. And again, that's where all these big chunk gains came from.
Yep. And I think once he has a little bit of separation, he is going to continue that down the field because his long speed is way better than his short area burst. So yeah, I think that he has a chance to be like a quality number 2 wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be the target earner, though. I think this is kind of like where I like Jameson Williams tape more than Troy Franklin's coming out
10 out of 10 so far. 10 out of 10
of college. But I think that maybe if this one role, if you're just a downfield guy that's really slender, I'm not sure if that's like a true number 1 wide or a true like first round wide receiver anymore. We saw like Jalen Hyatt, who also had some of this kind of round 1-2. He goes into the 3rd round. Those are Oregon and Tennessee. It's not the same offense, but there's a little bit Mickey Mousey.
I don't care what anybody says. I trade right now our 60 whatever pick. I think it's like 68th pick for my Carolina Panthers for Jalen Hyatt this exact moment if you gave me the opportunity.
I was going to bring this up. I mean, if people have stuck with us on the channel for over a year, you really liked Jalen Hyatt. So I would be confused.
Me too. I love that man. I've drafted him last year in 50 of 50 fantasy leagues. Him and Jordan Addison. Obviously, Hyatt didn't get the opportunities, but most of the time he was my last pick anyway. So I was able to luck out there. And yeah, his future is going to be great as long as they get a quarterback. I do expect the Giants to get probably Penix, but we're going to see.
Confused if you didn't like Troy Franklin.
I had Jalen Hyatt with a round 2 grade. I had Troy Franklin with a round 2 grade. I had Hyatt slightly ahead of Franklin because I thought that Hyatt had a little bit more wiggle to him and maybe a little bit better at the catch point than Troy Franklin. But that said, there was a couple times where Troy Franklin, if he's going straight up and having to high point the ball, he can win those contested catches because his length is impressive.
I'm telling you, forget Troy Franklin. You know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to pick some wide receivers. We're going to be doing some look backs on previous wide receivers from last year. We'll look at Jameson Williams. We got to look at my dog, Jalen Hyatt, too.
And he does have bunnies to get up in the air. I think the contested catches that I'm worried about is he trusting his hands? Is he letting the ball come into him? And then as a safety or a linebacker, or just that corner, just playing right through him where he doesn't have the mass to kind of stay in the ground.
To round this out, to open,
round this out, you need to be following Underdog Football Show. You need to be following Josh Norris and Hayden Winks on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. They bring us top tier information. I cannot thank them enough for all their sacrifices and how much work they put in, especially with making these videos as well. So again, thank you. Please make sure to follow them. They were the ones providing the content today.
Said that I was having trouble with Troy Franklin. I think that also played into, I watched Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and then Troy Franklin after that. So, but in that case, I took to Twitter asking all of you for your comparisons. And when I say they were all over the map, they were all over the map. They ranged.
Jordan Addison, oral first year. Okay. Feels lazy, but Jalen Hyatt and Paul Richardson. Okay. Cross between Devontae and Addison. Will Fuller, but taller. Robbie Anderson's a good version. Jameson Williams. So Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison.
From Devontae Smith, which I think y'all need to watch some ball. If you think that these two guys play the same, they might weigh the same. They don't play the same. But all the way down to like MVS. Paul Richardson, who I actually remember Paul Richardson, I believe at Colorado, being really good with bucket catches and contested situations. The names that I came up with, Robbie Chosen Anderson and Nelson Aguilar. Is kind of where I went. Nelson Aguilar was a first round pick and kind of didn't develop that consistency aspect. Robbie Anderson's had a couple really good seasons in the NFL, and actually they're around the same height. But that's kind of that role player, that streaky role player in ways that can make a real mark for 2 or 3 or.
Okay, so then I could see why you would put him as a late second, early third, because you're not going to be betting on him to develop. You're betting on him to be very streaky. And if that's the case, what does that say about Troy Franklin? Is he able to fix that? Again, it's going to matter where he lands, not what position.
4 games, but is not, as you said, that target earner, that focal point of the offense that maybe this statistical profile might lend itself to frequently.
Better in best ball. I think like compared to MVS, I think that Troy Franklin is just a little bit looser of an athlete, more reliable type of player here. But I think like comparing him to like Xavier Worthy, where we're talking about speed is the name of the game for both of these guys, not very physical. I think that Xavier Worthy,
I prefer Xavier Worthy.
So do I. I don't think it's that close, just because I think that Worthy is a more dynamic athlete kind of before and after the catch. So I moved like Xavier Worthy ahead. And then you get into your, like, if we're talking about number 2 receivers, then it's like, okay, do you want your slot wide receiver types with like the Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey's, or do you want the vertical element of Troy Franklin? I just think that's just maybe a little bit overvalued. Like you said, there's a bunch of these type of guys that are 180 pounds that could run a 4.4. The Chargers keep trotting out UDFA guys for this role, driving us nuts. But I think
Tyrell Williams was one of the names that came up in that comparison list too.
Okay,
yeah. If Troy Franklin learns a short and intermediate inside game, breaking route game, that would do wonders.
Okay. I did make a video about this one, so I've got a little bit of say in this. They're telling me that Troy Franklin is DJ Chark. You want to go check his draft history? His draft history is going to tell you that he had the same issues. Great top end speed, got some decent hands, does get kind of, muscled around a little bit due to the size. I think he's a little bit taller than, I'm considerably taller than Troy Franklin, but I'm not a Chark fan. So if that's the case, and I know he's not going to use Chark as a reference, but that's what I'm hearing. DJ Chark. And I don't want another DJ Chark on my Carolina Panthers. So
for the profile that he puts out there. But just right now, we don't have that. All right, there we go. Go right now. Watch the rest of the videos that we have on all of these wide receiver prospects. The more of you that subscribe.
Yep, this is what I went to go get. I see football show, or I'm sorry, the Underdog Football Show with Joshua Norris and Hayden Winks. Make sure you go check him out. Subscribe.
This is South Carolina wide receiver Xavier Legette, a man who had 42 receptions in his first 4 years as a Gamecock, and then reeled off a cool 33 catches for 15 plus yards in 2023.
Huge fan of Legette just for how he.
Okay. To be 100% transparent, I do believe that Dave McCandless is looking at Legette. I keep calling him Leggett. I'm going to keep calling him Leggett. We're just going to keep it like that. XL is most likely going to be a Carolina that Carolina wants. Do I love the pick? I'm not sure. Again, I'd rather go get a JPJ and a Wilson from NC State, or a JPJ and a Kool-Aid McKinstry, or, kind of seeing where we go. I'm not saying we need a number one wide receiver. Not even saying that this XL would be number one. He'd probably be a wide receiver 2 to start, but it's just, I don't know. I'm hoping these two, Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, are able to change my mind.
He got here to be considered as a top 2, top 3 round selection here. In his first 4 seasons, only 423 yards, a rare 5th-year breakout, like a true 5th-year breakout.
1,500. Okay, clearly not a rusher out of the backfield.
At the same school.
Yes, all high school at South Carolina. He actually played quarterback there. So then he was,
Okay, so that's an interesting wrinkle. That's interesting. Very, very interesting.
His numbers in high school were absolutely ridiculous. Unfortunately, he loses both of his parents in high school. He has a motorcycle accident at South Carolina.
I've been doing a lot of work on Xavier Legette this week to figure out the late breakout question mark. Unfortunately, this young man has had to go through a lot in his life to get where he is today, and I think it's a testament to his character that he is here. Shout out Brett Coleman at BretTKOLLMANN on Twitter. Brett Coleman. Looks like he posted it March 6, 2024. Earlier in his high school career, he was a wide receiver and even started as a freshman, but in his senior year, the coaching staff felt that his athleticism helped the team most if he was a quarterback. So they converted him, and he ran for 1,800 yards as a running quarterback. This obviously delayed his development as a receiver. Very tragically, in the same year, he also lost both of his parents within 6 months of each other. Obviously, a horrible thing to go through as a teenager, and I truly do send him the deepest condolences for his losses. He gray-shirted at South Carolina, and then after his freshman season, COVID hit, which obviously also impacted his development as a young receiver. And then after his sophomore season, coaching change. He was behind established upperclassmen too, so he just didn't get the snaps. Okay.
The COVID season happens. There's a coaching change, and all of this time, Xavier Legette is relearning how to play wide receiver. So I think that's like the reason why he was a late breakout. But for a late breakout, he really broke out. 105 yards per game, 3.2 yards per route run. And then also he's an exceptional kick returner as well. So a crazy athlete and an even crazier story.
It really is a unique profile in a class that has a lot of them. This is probably the one that tops the list. Let's just go back and some numbers that matter. 6'1", 221 pounds. At that 220 pound weight, a 4.39 40. Okay. A 91st.
Okay. One thing I need to find out. How old is this dude? He is 23, January 29, 2001. So that means he will be 24 after the end of this next football season. Not bad. Xavier Worthy, 20, 21, 20. Okay. Let's see. Getting anything from anybody? We are live. I appreciate you, Mr. Dale. Let's jump back over here.
Percentile broad jump, a 79th percentile vertical jump. We're going to record a Xavier Worthy
9-inch hands. Okay. I'm okay with this. Average starter.
Video here in a moment, and it's why I love the wide receiver position, because Xavier Worthy and Xavier Legette are listed and compared against each other. There's a 56-pound difference between these two dudes. It's why
56. Holy shit!
A wide receiver is not a wide receiver. He played this season at 22 years of age, and was an athletic freak. So yeah, I mean, let's dive into it, Hayden. Where do you think that he thrives or could succeed on an NFL field?
He was manufactured a lot of touches, and I kind of liked him in that role. He was played on the outside on 65% of his snaps, but he wasn't like this traditional X wide receiver by any means, despite having like the size of that. Actually, a little more compact of a frame style version of Deebo Samuel. And that's not just the South Carolina numbers. They would use him in the backfield.
I don't love that comparison, because if that's the case, and this dog mentality that McCandless is talking about might be trying to bring in the Laviska Shenault, essentially, that Reich tried to bring in to be Debo-like. And if that's the case, I don't love this pick.
They would use him in the screen game, mesh routes to get him kind of cooking after the catch. And I thought I liked him in that role. At the same time, though, he can win down the field. I'm not sure if I saw that much in between those two areas, but he made some really acrobatic high point catches. There was a couple post routes where I thought he created great separation down the field. So he's kind of like this mystery where I can see him winning way down the field on occasion, but for whatever reason, I kind of liked him in this like manufactured kind of touch part of the game, which I was not really expecting when I looked at his size.
Yeah, and there were honestly about 3 or 4 catches the entire season where they asked him to work the middle of the field about like 10 to 15 yards. Mm-hmm. And there were moments though, Hayden, where I saw him, have a release off the line, lean into the cornerback that was there in man coverage, snap his head and create that sliver of separation and then sustain it while working up the middle of the field. Like that is more than just an athlete stuff. And he was showing it.
And I can appreciate that, but if we want dogs, we're taking him because of his size. We're taking him because of his high pointing ability. We're taking him for all insert quarterback here. I don't think the comparison to Deebo is good for any wide receiver, because it means that it's taking you away from being a wide receiver. You catch screen passes and take a ball out of the back, especially where he lands. Just utilize the running backs that you have rather than destroying this, wide receiver.
Granted, obviously in his 5th season. And I know you talked about his story coming from high school and then the difficulties at South Carolina. I actually went back and watched a bunch of his other 4 years at South Carolina. And like the first couple, his hands were just awful. That likely led to a total lack of trust with him and the coaching staff. The quarterback being awful before Spencer Rattler did not help. And then when you got to 2022, when Spencer Rattler was there, he dropped a lot of like adjustment catches or tip balls that then led to interceptions on off frame balls. So again, because of that, I think it prohibited the coaching staff from allowing him to have extended playing time game in and game out. There were still flashes, including like this crazy body twisting catch against Notre Dame in that final game of 2022. And then that perfectly coincided with his first game in 2023, where he destroyed the North Carolina Tar Heels, like the best player on that field for both teams. So
Boo UNC. Boo UNC. Go Duke. Let's go.
Even dive into if it was just like a 1 season profile, right? 6.4 yards after the catch per reception is awesome to include that 13 average depth of target that you talked about. A 3.15 yards per route run is basically 5th best in this entire wide receiver class. Credited with just 2 drops this year, despite what we saw in the first 4 years. 47 of his catches went for first down. So Hayden, you have this magnificent 1-year profile and then a rough 4-year one. Again, this is one of those weird statistical anomalies that frequently does not work out in the NFL.
Yes.
But you and I watch him and we can definitely see how it does work out in the NFL.
Helping his chances here, 26 yards per.
Okay. I'm going to throw something crazy out there, because obviously if he's going to be available at 33 for my Carolina Panthers, he's going to be available at 28, 29, and that whole thing. Do the 49ers broker a deal to trade Deebo Samuel to then take a Xavier Leggett with their first-round pick and then use the stuff they get from the Deebo trade, which you could probably get a second and some future stuff, or maybe another piece or two. So maybe you do that, so this way you can basically have... it's an interesting one.
Kick return, and now we have these new NFL kick return rules and hip drop tackle and stuff. So someone like Xavier Leggett, I don't know how he doesn't look a little bit better just based off of the rule changes. The hands part, I keep going back and forth with. Not credited with the drops, but I'm not sure if he's like a consistent catcher yet. There's a couple times where he's catching it with his body. There's a couple bobbled catches in the mix there as well. And I think one of the reasons why they manufactured so many touches for him is because it's a little bit easier to work out in space underneath like that and not having to make some crazy plays down the field. So I thought what I came back with, you can, if you really want to squint, Like Cordell Patterson is kind of like a weird body where really
Okay, I like that comparison. Cordell, okay.
dominant in special teams. Obviously, we can't expect him to be that dominant on special teams, but kind of used as a wide receiver, as a running back at times.
Dude just tripped over himself and ate it.
You can see that if it doesn't work out. Chase Claypool was a great athlete that just didn't really understand the nuances of wide receiver.
Okay.
Maybe Xavier Legette could kind of do some of that. Hopefully he's not the knucklehead that Chase Claypool is. But the one thing I kept going back with was the Deebo Samuel stuff, because he's so hard to tackle out in space. There's just one huge difference between Deebo and Xavier Legette. He's just not agile enough. He's like almost like too leggy. He would kind of get chopped down at times. I thought that there was a couple times where he could make a guy miss with some wiggle, and Xavier Legette just doesn't have it like that. But the size.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
And the speed when he has a little bit of space to work with, that's where you can get the big touches like you see with Deebo Samuel.
I have a proposition. Why don't we put him on the Rashee Rice performance plan?
Sure.
Of maybe his rookie year, turn him into that underneath, leg it out, yards after catch player. And then like as the season goes along, we ask him to run a few more legit big boy routes down the field on the outside. And we'll obviously see what that development turns into. I think that's a perfect example of what Xavier Legette can be. Now, that is on the Kansas City Chiefs, a well-coached organization.
I like how I said the Chiefs too.
To another roster that, you know, is losing and not successful and not with the best quarterback in the NFL. And they kind of force you into roles based on injuries or what have you that you might not be ready for, then that can obviously like derail production that you could have in that same sentiment. But to me, that would be, I know their frames aren't exactly the same. Rice is like 6'5", 204 pounds. So obviously Xavier Legette brings some more thickness to the party than Rashee Rice does. But man, in those small samples that we did see some insane body control and we did see some legitimate, again, lean into you, snap it off to create separation on difficult routes. It gives me a lot of hope and a lot of want for this to like turn into like a legit player, because if he does hit with this body type and his power and his speed on top of it, I think he might be like everyone's favorite player in a few years.
Legit, especially if he's like that, you know, I'm going to call him like essentially Derrick Henry as a wide receiver. So that'd be pretty awesome to see him stiff arming the shit out of people.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I keep going back and forth. I settled in with like a late round 2 grade, which is kind of like the intriguing dart throw range. You have to have a plan for this type of player.
I don't. I think he's going to be 33 or 39 to the Carolina Panthers.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at. 220 that can run sub 4.4. Like those players are just hard to find a little bit. But once we like know where he's actually drafted, or if he actually has a chance to playing time, kind of be somebody that we truly care about.
The two names for skeptics, and I understand why there could be skepticism here, that they bring up are in the last 2 years. The first one being Treylon Burks coming out of Arkansas. I want to remind you that Treylon Burks, where he was at his best at Arkansas, was in the slot, kind of on those manufactured touches. And Xavier Legette just this past season was only in the slot 34% of his snaps. The other name, and I was victim to this, was Jonathan Mingo. I will add that Jonathan Mingo did not have a single season that was nearly close to as productive as what we just saw from Xavier Legette. So in those ways, I think that comparison also falls short too.
Yeah, I think that Legette has a little bit more juice on.
I couldn't agree more, man. Mingo is a very physical guy. I love the potential he could be. He should be our slot guy. It should be obviously Adam Thielen. Again, I'm talking from the Carolina Panthers perspective. The X would be Deontay Johnson. Your Y is, or I'm sorry, your next one, Y, I'm pretty sure it's Y, is Xavier Legette. Then you throw out Jonathan Mingo with Thielen in the slot when you're running 4 wide receivers, and then just swap Mingo and Thielen out for your wide receiver 3 whenever the situation calls for it. So
hate than what I saw from Mingo, but also like late round 2, and that's kind of where I had Mingo. These guys bust all the time. Like these are a complete dart throw range. And I don't think anybody loved Jonathan Mingo last year. He was just like the wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 because it was bad draft class. Like I have some like positive spins for Xavier Legette, and I still have him outside my top 10 because there's too many other guys in this draft class that I really, really liked. So I hope that he works out because he's really fun to watch. Obviously, his story is fantastic. And I think there will be some moments, even if he's not a consistent player, where there'll be a manufactured touch that actually hits, and this will be a special highlight type of player.
This is an unreal wide receiver class, as Hayden is talking about. If you want to check out all the other profiles before you leave, hit hit that subscribe button, hit thumbs up, check out the rest of the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, shout out to them. Hold on. They deserve to have their names on the screen. If you're not following these people, you are not doing yourself a service. Josh Norris, Hayden Winks, and the Underdog Football Show bring us some amazing content. I'm hopeful that you enjoyed this 4 wide receiver special that we did today, our little live stream. Second one that we've done. Hopefully you are able to come and join us tomorrow. We're going to take a deep dive into some more wide receivers. Want to hear about some Keelan Coleman, some Jalen Polk, and some others. Otherwise, my name is Nick. This has been Roll Coverage. Make sure you drop us a follow. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And otherwise, great rest of the day.